Right.
All right. Hello and welcome to, I believe our
which
second
one it
episode.
is.
Sorry?
You've forgotten which video.
No, I know what we're doing. I know what we're doing. Should we start that again?
Craic.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. Hello and welcome to our, I believe, second episode of Ffilm Craic. The show where Clive and myself, Nick, talk about movies that have fallen into obscurity or maybe never clawed their way out of obscurity at all. Little seen, little known.
Yes, I think we're still kind of playing with the format a little bit, but I think for now at least, our taking off point is we're trying to go after things that are currently not in circulation, certainly not on disc at least, and a streaming, and that might change. We might go into alternate versions or things that were once lost and were found, or because that gives me an excuse to talk about Queen Kong.
Okay, perfect.
So but for now, we're kind of digging around in the, well, I wouldn't say the treasure chest, but the bottom of the barrel of things that haven't had a proper release.
Yeah.
And congratulations, I want to say off the bat, Nick. You managed to choose a film for our second episode, even more boring than Inchon.
Perfect. Excellent. So I thought this could be one that we could divide as well. So I should let you know, I have watched it twice this week.
Man.
And it would be my second and third time watching the film. And I think this film is deeply problematic in some ways, but I also think it's wonderful. I think it's a high watermark of whatever the hell it is, whether this is an art film or the scummiest trash that's ever been put to celluloid. I thoroughly enjoy most of what's going on in this movie. After
this and Inchon, I was considering renaming this Boring as Feck. So I'm hoping we choose something more exciting for the third round. But anyway, regardless, what fucking monstrosity did you make me watch this time?
Well, I think that's very unfair, Clive, given some of what I've sat through in your Tokyo apartment over the years. I seem to remember, what was it, a 3-hour film about the fatwa against Salman Rushdie?
Yeah, I made Ron watch that as well. So fair dues. This would be considered revenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is this thing? I'm not sure. It was made in 1982 or 83. It seems to have, it may be made in 82, but released in 83.
Yeah, I think so.
By a guy called, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Eligio Herrero, Spanish director and writer, who really only seems to have directed one or two other movies and then wrote a few, most of which seem to be either trashy sex comedies or sort of trashy sex drama, or thriller things.
Right.
Most interesting for me, maybe because of this movie, is he directed a movie called Jane, My Little Savage, or Jane Mi Pequeña Salvaje, which appears to be a sort of Tarzan-y comedy, but there's a monkey sort of prominently shown in the poster, which raises some questions given this movie. And this is the only other movie I think that he wrote and directed. There might be one other, but it's the other movie that seems to have gotten a big release that he wrote and directed.
I quite fancy to see Jane, My Little Savage.
I haven't been able to find a copy, so it may be even more lost than this thing that we watched.
And so we should mention what it's called.
It's called Animales Rationales, or Human Animals.
I think we can go with human animals, because it does seem, so we should point out that this film is actually quite rare, difficult to get your hands on. There's no Blu-ray, there's no DVD, there's no streaming. There was VHS, and there does seem to have been a few VHS versions around the world. So the version we watched seems to be from the German, right?
Yes, because it's the clearest. Yes, I think it's the clearest print maybe that exists. But then there is one,
Right.
like there was an Australian release
Yeah.
on KTEL video.
There's a VHS. Sorry, there's a UK VHS.
There is.
Yeah, there was.
Wow.
Yeah, and so what I was surprised, I'm guessing it must have been a pre-cert
Mhm.
that no one ever bothered to resubmit after the
Yeah.
Nasties thing. But that's surprising to me that there were enough VHS versions out there around the world. You'd think that this would be slightly more visible in the fan community, but no, it's still quite the obscurity, right?
Oh yeah, it's very hard to find any reference to it online. There's very few reviews. Weirdly enough, one of the only major contemporary reviews of the film that I found is by Joe Bob Briggs.
Oh, okay.
Who wrote a review of it at the time, and quite a glowing review.
Oh.
And complaining about the fact that it hadn't been on the drive-in screens very long before complaints caused it to be pulled off.
So you played drive-ins?
Yes, yes, and yeah. So it got and apparently the company was, I don't know if they were threatened or picketed or whatever, but they pulled it from distribution. Like the whatever company was distributing it in the US ceased to distribute it. And so part of his review is complaining about the fact that it was
okay.
I
suppose it's easy to at least it's easy to get worldwide distribution because no one had to worry about dubbing or subtitling it because there's no dialogue.
Yes, so that is one of the many features of this movie that is kind of fascinating. It's not a silent movie because we do get, however you say, we're diegetic sound. There is and the three main human characters do make a lot of noise. They're always laughing or cackling or
I couldn't quite,
or grunting.
Headaches I had with this film was trying to figure out like what emotions they were trying to express in some
yes, because I almost felt like it's that silent movie. It's almost like a silent movie acting style. Like it's so over the top. Like when people are emoting, it almost becomes unreadable. Like you're like, yeah, what are people feeling? But a very brief. I feel like the script to this must have been like 20 pages long.
Yeah,
because there's no dialogue. But basically, these three human beings wake up on this kind of volcanic sand ash pile mountain thing. This was all shot in the Canary Islands, so on Lanzarote and Gran Canaria, and which are highly volcanic kind of islands, but they also have palm trees and the rest of it. And I love the fact that they thank the islands at the end, like, thank you for letting us film here. I'm sure their tourist boards were like, why did we allow them to make that movie here?
Come and visit where your favorite film, Animal Rationale, was.
So they wake up on this slag heap, and so I should say, no, the movie actually opens with a bunch of tinted stock footage of nuclear explosions.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which kind of leads us in the direction that this is a post-apocalyptic,
I guess,
situation.
There's a few mushroom clouds. There's quite a lot. It's almost like fetishizing of mushroom clouds. It lasts about a minute. There's lots of different mushroom clouds, and also a shot of them flying over the devastation of Hiroshima. Briefly. Just to put a bit of a bad taste in your mouth from the get-go.
Oh yeah.
And then
which you'll get repeatedly again throughout the film.
Yeah, and then apparently the post-nuke world does look like Lanzarote, and three human figures dressed like they're on their way to a dinner party, mostly.
Well, two of them. I think the ones that are established quickly after that are brother and sister, right? Because
whoa, where the fuck did you get that from? How did you establish that?
Because in the photograph that they pull out, it's a picture of the two of them, and it says like, "To my brother" or whatever at the very beginning. Yeah, no, they're supposed to be The blondes are supposed to be brother and sister.
See, that went totally over my head.
Okay.
That is the one like thing that you read is, and I couldn't tell, was that a subtitle or was that on the because it's
written on the photograph, but then it's also been subtitled for us to be, because it may have been written in Spanish.
And that's the only thing, right?
That's yes.
But I didn't get the connection that, because that could be anything, like, you know, you're my brother in arms, or, you know, like, or
right,
or it was from her, or is there anything
most
else?
of the reviews I've read of it seem to take it for granted that they are supposed to be brother and sister.
I think that
anyway.
I mean, it does make things grottier, and I can see where you dig that interpretation, but I don't know. I'm not sure if that's.
Wait. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean.
No, I'm not accusing you of incest. I'm just saying, in terms of if you're getting off on a certain
scuzziness about the whole film. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. That's the reading. That's the common reading anyway. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's not established as a fact. But in any case, these two look like they've come from maybe the same place. She's in some sort of pink dress and like red high heels, and he's in a white dinner jacket with a big red bow tie.
Yes.
And
but there's another guy, isn't there, who's a road basically. Yeah, like so this guy, I you know, kind of like Tom Savini and Frank Zappa had a child, like Savini Zappa. He also wakes up after the first two wake up, and immediately goes into a air guitar solo, which is the first moment at which, when I was watching it the first time many years ago, I was like, hang on, what? Okay, yes,
what's going on?
I can already see the roads starting to branch at this point. So up until this point, I was like, okay, and then I suppose this goes. I found this deeply irritating because this is where it starts going into slightly arty territory, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I have slightly, I don't know, I have less tolerance for, I don't know, but I found the fact that he was playing air guitar quite annoying.
Perfect. Good. So you've got Swedish John Voight basically, and you've got the girl, and you've got Savini Zappa, and they seem to be the last three human beings maybe on Earth, or wherever they are, at least in Lanzarote, and so they just kind of wander around for about the first third of the movie with no dialogue across. See, I think the other thing that I like about the film is I think the cinematography is quite beautiful. There's a number of shots that I think are really quite stunning, and it may just be that it's a beautiful place and it's easy to frame a nice shot, you know, on these black sand beaches. And it took me back to Ito in Izu, which also has black sand beaches. So, you know, I have some fond, you know, memories of that. So you know, and then when I thought you would like the crabs, I figured that the crabs would have made you happy.
No, not really. I mean, I do like crab. I anytime I see a crab, I'm pleased. But I suppose I can't quite get my head around what the intention. Like, I get the overall thing that this is some kind of parable, or, you know, like if we were to start again, this is the kind of human condition, but then there's so they encounter some crabs on the beach, which they're terrified of.
Yes.
Even though they're like 1/10 their size at least.
Yes.
And there's only like 3 of them or something, but they back off as if there's an army of crab, like it's a Guy N. Smith novel.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But then
and the crabs are bubbling, which I quite like. I quite like the bubbles that the crabs are blowing.
Fair play. But then Savini Zappa eventually brings a rock down on one of them. Yeah. And figures out, we can eat these things, I guess. So they're not scared of them anymore.
And then immediately with the protein decides to then go and interfere with the girl.
Yes,
I guess
because
he's had a meal now, so he's going to.
well, she's ripped her pink dress up to make herself makeshift shoes so that she can walk on the beach, and that
Yeah, because high heels are not the best thing for the apocalypse, it turns out.
right, but that exposes her panties for the first time. So
Mhm.
yeah, Zappa gets all excited, like he's seen his first, fan service in an anime.
Yes, yeah,
And,
basically, yeah.
And then
One thing leads to another. But here's a
yeah,
question: did you notice that the three main characters had these weird dots on their faces?
yeah.
And which I don't think I noticed that the first time I watched the movie.
Again,
I have no idea
from
what that's about.
we're going from a slightly washed out VHS print, and there might be something in what you're saying. For instance, the cinematography might be stunning if you're going to see the film proper and in proper widescreen and everything. It might make it at least look less grotty.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, and that's kind of how it. So the thing is as well, just to get back to what we were saying. So this dies out a little bit halfway through the film, but so most of the time they react to things in the way that you would expect them to react, right? Like, oh, ooh, oh. But then there's occasional moments where they're overcome with grief.
Yes.
But nothing's changed around them. So they'll suddenly get really, and what happened? What happened? And nothing happened. And then likewise they go, and again, and I couldn't figure out what they were saying to it. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, no, sure. I think that the grief scenes always seem to be connected to the disappearance of like human culture, right? There's these weird moments, like there's the photographs at the beginning there where they immediately evaporate, all the images disappear, and then they get to this kind of lighthousey looking place in the middle of nowhere. They go in, and all the food products have like their labels have become like white. There's nothing on them, and then they go through a book, and all the text has disappeared, and there's a calendar and a clock with no numbers, and it seems like there's this weird emotional reaction to this erasure of human culture and like on obviously language itself, because none of them speak. So it's almost as though there's been this big chalkboard eraser taken too. Now what that's about, I have no idea what it means or why it's happened.
Right.
But that seemed to be that those moments where they were having those freakouts early in the movie often seem to be connected to that.
Yes, I suppose so.
But the laughing, I have no idea. Yeah, they do just spontaneously. It's almost like they're all children. I mean that's just another thing. Like, and their reaction to the crabs, it's like as though they've all become like sort of aged 3 in their minds or something.
Right. Well, I certainly felt aged 3 watching the film.
Right.
It detracted from my IQ levels.
You lost a few IQ points.
Yeah. And then they meet a dog.
Yes, they do.
They
meet Larry,
dog, which apparently is Larry in the credits.
Yes, Larry. Yeah.
Which maybe makes them more Curly and Shemp.
Yep, entirely possible. Yeah, there could be a Stooges reference here. Interestingly, the three human actors, 2 of them were actually in this Jane, My Little Savage movie, apparently. Carol Kirkham and Greer Indvard. But the other guy, Jose Yepes, is in tons of stuff.
Okay.
Like,
yes, he is. Yeah.
Like his IMDb thing goes on, and I thought you might be interested to know that he is in Tuareg. Yes, which relates to an entirely different show, I think.
By a couple of losers.
Yeah, those guys suck. And then he's also in the first conversation you and I ever had was about Umberto Lenzi's City of the Walking Dead. I think after he left, we had come out of Mark Schilling's book talk thing and around the street. He's in that too. So that's a nice full circle. But so what is he doing in this movie is the question, because he's actually some sort of semi-professional actor. The other 2 appear to have done nothing else, and I'm not surprised that they did nothing else after this.
apart from Jane, My Little Savage.
Yes, which might be the year before, or
I wonder if he played Jane.
I'm not sure. But yeah, anyway, weird. So yes.
Yeah, so there's a dog, and then they happily frolic, and they find some fruit.
Yeah, well, they kind of go from a part because it's all kind of deserty and all kind of like more Mad Maxy looking at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then they kind of find this little Garden of Eden sort of setting. And there is a biblical element to all this too, and it does get very Cain and Abel-y near the end.
Yes, and he kills a rabbit, and they have great hilarity when he throws a dead rabbit at her twice. He does that joke twice. He throws a dead rabbit. He's like, ah, and then ah, and then they do it again because it was so good the first time. And then so it seems to have been established that Zappa and the bird they fuck.
Yes.
But not Blondie John Voight.
No,
doesn't. But then he gets jealous. He gets jealous.
Yeah, and quite sad.
Yes.
He takes a long jog into the woods.
Yeah. He drinks a glass of water and runs around the garden. And then
that's a good reference for anybody who read Mark E. Smith's book there.
Oh well spotted. And then but then eventually he gets some as well.
Yes.
So suppose, they seem to be getting along all right. That's fine. But then the dog decides he wants in on the action.
Yes. This is where the movie, I think when I was initially watching it the first time, it's quite a slow burn. Well, it's just a slow movie, but it's quite a slow burn in that it kind of intimates this or quite early on and keeps intimating it, and you keep thinking, no, like they can't. They can't. That's not actually going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. But it goes on and on. It's quite near the end of the movie where finally they're like, oh no.
Right.
Okay, so that is going to happen. But yes, it's weird how much of the movie is kind of a setup for what ultimately happens.
I think the final straw for the dog might be when Zappa pisses on him.
Yes, that's a bizarre scene. But again, this human animals concept of like, well, a lot of what Zappa does seems to be about asserting dominance in one way or another.
He's feral, isn't he, almost? And so I think the dog's like, fuck you, you don't piss on me. I'm going to piss. I'm going to
be the man of the house.
My territory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it seems like that all the males in the story are in this kind of one-upsmanship thing around, being the provider, except actually for Zappa, who doesn't seem to care. He when they finally get settled and after they built the house, he just makes a flute and starts kind of playing with it. And she's pretty disgusted by this. She actually takes it off him at one point and throws it in the fire because that's useless to me.
Yeah, that's not productive.
Yes. Whereas the other guy, where John Voight starts to kind of come into his own and starts hunting animals and brings home a deer at one point. I think that the dog is upset about that too, because the dog has brought back a rabbit again.
Right.
But he's brought the deer in, and the dog's they're like, we don't need the rabbit anymore. His feelings are hurt.
I think the mistake he made was the flute, because as we all know, what he should have done was he should have invented the guitar, because if you whip out a guitar at a campfire, as everyone knows, the chicks flock around you, right? That's
absolutely. But that's
the main reason most people start bands and learn to play guitar, right? But no one whips out a flute. Like, that's not cool.
No, unless you're Jethro Tull, I guess.
But he could play guitars. I bet he started with a guitar and then progressed to the flute.
Okay.
Because if you're going from the, phallic male domination thing, you're not going to exert your dominance by, sucking on a flute, right?
Right. Well, that's what's fascinating, because there is this element of the phallic symbol coming up. So there is a flute, which she is like, I don't want your flute. She throws it in the fire. But then, of course, the other guy has made this weird knife thing.
Yeah.
There's that whole exchange where where Zappa is very upset about the fact that this guy has the knife, and they get in a fight, and then they're like, "Oh, it's all right. We'll share the girl." But then later on,
flute to a gunfight.
Exactly. But then later on, there's that very bizarre scene where Zappa decides he's going to go into the shack to sleep with the girl, and then Voight kind of steps up and he sees his back, he's got the knife, and then they kind of face off, and then it's like he hands him the phallic. He's like, "Here, you may have the phallic power, but I'm still going to have sex. Yes. You can just have the knife and go somewhere with it."
But that, again, that's the other big alpha male neg thing that you do, right? If you want the woman to lust for you, you give her over to the other man. You hand him your cock, like, I don't care, and then that changes the dynamic that you're not desperate anymore, and
right.
At least but it's funny. From what I read, from what grown-ups do, I don't know. This is
right. Yeah. But he and then once Zappa gets the knife, that's actually the moment at which he goes out and pees on the dog. So again, further trying to assert some dominance over.
Right.
But yes, so then ultimately the dog gets annoyed with all the humans, except for the girl, and tries to push them out, and basically takes their place as the man of the house.
This is the only bit of the film that I did actually quite like and worked for me in terms of its surreal. Is after the dog has had sex with the woman, there's a great scene where she's in a kind of post-coital nap, and the dog stretched out on the bed, just like relaxing, and both men are like cowering outside the hut, like
and kind of licking each other, like literally licking their wounds. Like there's a bizarre where they take solace in each other's arms.
Well, you think it's gonna go. You think it's gonna go homoerotic as well, right? Mm-hmm. At that point, but then one of them, it's like,
John Voight. He's just like, this is not. I'm not gonna be with this beardy guy. This is not. I'm not gonna take this lying down.
Right.
And goes and burns down the house. And then the two men then do murder the dog, which is pretty grim.
Yeah, that's pretty grim. And
then have a final showdown over the right to be with the girl.
And then the Aryans win and walk off hand in hand, right?
Yes. It's funny you should bring it up.
If what you're saying is your interpretation is true, then
their children won't be the brightest. Yeah.
So they're going to give birth to something with webbed feet in the future, I guess.
And what's interesting is one of the only lengthy reviews I was able to find of this online, and I didn't realize what I had gotten into until I was into it and was reading the review, was from some sort of Nazi website.
Oh, wow. Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, I got about a third of the way into the review, and I was like, oh, wait a sec. Like, yeah, and taking that exact, basically arguing that the Zappa Savini character was some sort of like Untermensch who was just like doing nothing useful and just being a parasitic drag on everybody, and had like to be dealt with.
And comparable to the dog.
Yeah, like, basically.
I was eternal Jew and the rats thing, and
it had not occurred to me that I suspect that that's not a reading that the director was intending, given that he's a Spaniard, and I think that that's probably not a reading that the guy playing Frank Zappa intended either. But anyway, I was interesting.
Who knows? So did that website which you accidentally come across, were they in favor of the film? Did they?
I guess. Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be I didn't delve any further. It was an extensive website devoted to movies, I guess, that this person thought were, good.
Did you clear your browser history?
Yeah, basically. It's funny. It came with a warning. The blog came with a warning, like from Google or whatever, saying like this is going to happen. I just assumed that it would have been like, because it was dealing with sketchy, trashy movies. I had no idea that it was. No, it's not. It's because this is egregiously, grossly racist. It's some white supremacist website.
Did they have a review of American History X, which is like, well, this film's good until about halfway through, where the main character totally loses the plot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, becomes traitor to the cause.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, so you're saying you're saying no then to human
I
animals.
say no to human animals.
It was not your cup of tea.
Oh fuck, this was a bore. Like I can see it from the point of view of just what the holy fuck, like if I would have been old enough to have rented it in 1982 on a
Right.
VHS, you know, from the local petrol station that served at the video shop, and
Yep.
brought it home late at night, and was like, what in the fuck? Then I would probably have a bit more fondness for
Right.
it.
Right.
But already being a jaded film viewer,
Right. Right.
this wasn't extra special enough for me to take it to
Okay.
my heart. But
Okay.
yeah, it's certainly notably weird, I guess. But it's
And perhaps unsurprising that it. Yeah, perhaps unsurprising. Well, that's the thing that seems to divide people. You know, most of the reviews are, most people find it crushingly, mind-bendingly boring. For whatever reason, I don't.
Wow.
I find it soothing in the way that you find nudist camp movies soothing, right?
Right.
Like I just sit there and watch it play out, and I don't, you know, like it's just, I don't know.
So genuinely, did you kind of go with it? It doesn't.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
I've seen it 3 times now.
See that?
And every time
I couldn't do that.
I'm kind of casually amused by how weird it is, and I appreciate the beauty of the cinematography. And I mean, it is weird that everyone just stops wearing clothes at about the midway point. Although her fetching rabbit skin bikini is quite nice, that she suddenly starts showing up in at one point, and then we do get a full frontally nude John Voight at the end, or not, you know.
Right. Yes.
Which was also surprising because the movie had been kind of coy about that. They'd been very uncoy about showing her.
Yes.
Full frontally nude the entire last half of the movie, but yes, suddenly we got a bit of the dude, because I think he loses his underpants in that last fight against Frank Zappa.
Right. Right. Yeah. No. I mean, beyond being a bit of an oddity, and again, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, even within, like, for instance, when we first met, when you meet someone else who's really into kind of out there movie, it's always like, great, someone else I could talk to about films that most people aren't interested in. But then even within that,
oh yeah,
you know, there's this, but beyond the just the what the fuckness and the kind of novelty value, do you read any kind of message or metaphor, or what do you think they were trying to do with this film?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's like, is it an art film, or is it like a really lowbrow exploitation film?
See, I come down more on the former. I don't, because if you're going to do an exploitation film, you probably ramp up, like, I know that's odd to say considering that there's a lot of sex and nudity, but it's not, weirdly, it's not that like when a rape scene begins, for example, a sex scene, it doesn't really dwell, like they cut away, right? Like they would dwell more on that, and you'd think they'd dwell more on the violence, and you'd think they'd have more adventurous hijinks in there or things. So I'm leaning more toward, especially when you have the air guitar and the weird stuff about them wearing clothes, I'm leaning more on the extended arty metaphor is what they were aiming for.
Which is interesting, because again, the guy who wrote this appears to have done nothing else but trashy, you know, sex comedies and trashy kind of,
right. But you know how that goes. You get the one chance at directing.
That's what I think this is. I think this was his like, yes, I'm gonna make my statement.
Right.
But what the hell he's trying to say is completely lost on me.
Maybe it got away from him during the filming. Like,
right. I don't know. But it's so strange. It's so lugubrious. It's so, like, there's these moments of the soundtrack too that are kind of like prog rocky kind of synthy things that make it almost seem like it's a music video, like an annoyingly obtuse music video. And then there's other parts of the soundtrack that sound like they're from like a 1940s jazz kind of, like, you know, like it seems like the soundtrack's been plucked from library tracks maybe, but that they seem equally incongruous sometimes to what's going on screen.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
The boring kind of twiddly pretentiousness of it as well does feel like the film equivalent of a triple album by Yes or Pink Floyd or something.
Yeah. Which I guess I maybe have more sympathy for as well, or more tolerance for than you might. You know? Yeah. But yeah, no, it's funny. I would, in a weird way, put it in the same category in my mind with Singapore Sling, and maybe to a degree Island of Perversion.
Interestingly, both two other films that I don't care for much, and
there you go.
You do.
That yeah, and you know, in each case, there are movies I watched late at night for the first time by myself, probably in my early 20s, and woke up the next morning with a feeling of like, did I watch that, or was that
right
a dream? Like, and I had to actually go back and like check. Oh no, that's on the tape. That's that really, somebody really made that film.
The film it also reminded me of in terms of its a plotless rambling, and was just on the verge of, and this I suppose it could, if I'd watched it at a different time or place or in a different mood, it's that kind of thing that either hypnotizes you or just turns you off. And I haven't seen this film in 25 years, but I remember watching it on late night TV. The only time I've ever seen it in my room, so it would have been on, and this is going to make you sound like 90 years old, but you know, hey, I did grow up in South Wales. On a small black and white television where you actually tuned in the channel, rather than buttons. I watched Creatures the World Forgot, which, if you're familiar with, there was The Land That Time Forgot, which was the Amicus film based on the Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of Lost World, Nazi submarine finds a world full of dinosaurs film.
Yes, I actually watched it quite. It's the one with, like, isn't McClure in that? Doug McClure?
Yeah. Oh no, is Doug McClure? No, he should be, right? It's one of those films that it's either him or it seems like a Doug McClure vehicle.
I think he is in it anyway. Right. Yeah.
And then there was kind of like a semi follow-up to that called The People That Time Forgot,
which I think I saw as a kid with my dad, and we had a next door neighbor who was, I shouldn't finish just because who knows, this is on the internet now. There were some jokes made, I guess, about the Cro-Mags in that film.
Okay, all right.
Looking like some of our townies.
And there's actually a third film in the kind of loose series called Creatures the World Forgot, which is a caveman film, basically.
Okay.
So it's in that, you know, like the 1 million years BC kind of thing. But I think it's one.
Is that the Ringo Starr one?
No, that's Caveman. I think that is right. And
okay, because like, in a weird way, like Zappa, you know, dude, in this thing, as he gets increasingly caveman looking as the movie went on, somehow brought to mind some of that, like that era of like, or like, what's the Quest for Fire, when people were like, let's make another 2-hour movie where nobody says anything in English. Right. Just grunts and
So Creatures of the World Forgot is very much like that. It's like they took that those films were popular, but then they removed the dinosaurs, and then it's just people in loincloths running around going. It's very reminded me, but that film is a bit more slightly higher budgeted, I'm guessing, and I don't know where they would have filmed it, but it would have been more like, you know, looks like it was filmed in, Monument Valley or something. It's more rocks and stuff like that than this sandy kind of volcanic sand environment. But just in terms of the way it plays out, and you either go with it and you're mesmerized by it,
Right.
late night TV, or you fall asleep. It's yeah,
Right.
it's very similar.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So in any case, you won't be revisiting this twice more then.
No, although now I am kind of, now that I've thought about it, I'm tempted to watch Creatures the World Forgot again,
Okay.
because
So maybe maybe it'll be a
inspired
positive
me
outcome for all
somewhere.
this.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but if you were to ask me whether I would rather watch Inchon again or this, I have no doubt in my mind that I would come back to Human Animals every time.
Yeah, no, I think I might.
Inchon is a kind of boring that is a very standard kind of boring. It is the Costco brand of boring. Whereas
True.
if this movie is boring, it is boring in ways that most movies are not boring. It's boring in its own special ways.
This is true, and usually I would probably side with you, but I think if I had to, I think I would probably choose Incheon, just because, I don't know, I might have fun like picking out the historical accuracies or otherwise, or there's just a bit more meat on the bone where, and I'm a man who sits through 3 hours of Japanese pink cinema in theaters full of snoring old men. So I know boredom.
Right. Yes.
It's an old friend.
Right.
But even I found this a bit of a chore.
Well, I'm glad I could finally give you something that, after all these years,
yes,
that maybe came close to a couple of those nights we spent where you foisted some stuff on me. What was the one about the werewolf thing that they kept?
Oh, that's not boring. That's awesome. That's Curse of the Seven Jewels or something like that.
Yes.
Oh, well done. By the way, I think you've just thrown another one on the pile of things we might watch, because I think that's a pretty difficult
hard thing to find. Okay.
Yeah. And actually there's another cut of that, which apparently is longer. So
oh, good. Fantastic.
There we go. Revenge
awesome.
is sweet, isn't it, Nick?
This backfired. I shouldn't have brought up that. Anyway, I guess we can wrap it up. So
yes,
this is not a movie I can in good conscience recommend anyone to see, because subject matter is totally off the scale, sketchy.
Well, I think that's the thing is as well,
profoundly boring for those who are not into whatever it's doing.
It is sketchy, I suppose, but I suppose it's almost not sketchy enough to maintain interest.
Right. Okay.
It's not quite sketchy enough, maybe,
to maintain your interest.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It falls between 2 stools, I suppose, in a way. Like
yeah, it's definitely some kind of stool. There's no question about
right.
But no. I mean, as I said, I think the person who gave this to me would have been Sam McKinley, who might have come up in some of our previous chats. I don't know, but Sam being a guy from Kelowna, British Columbia at the time, who worked in the local video shop and was kind of our local expert in all things weird and classy. And then later on became known as the Rita. He's a noise musician as well. Came to Japan actually at one point and played there. And but anyway, he would often just show up with things on, not the movie things, that's something separate, but he would show up with stuff. And this was one of those things. He was like, "Yep, here's something."
Right.
He was obviously a fan. I think he might have even done a review of this.
This in separate the men from the boys.
yeah. Yes, I think I told you before. He once told me he had this thing where he would sometimes introduce people to Jess Franco too early, or who else is like Bruno Mattei, or just certain people whose films are very somnambulant. I think that are.
Yeah, I mean, Up or Super Vixens or a Russ Meyer film is one thing, and Shining Sex is quite the other.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I think that, but anyway, this was definitely that. This came originally to me from Sam. It was one I'd love to be able to remember what else was in that pile, because I'm sure it was all interesting. But
We should probably do some rare Jess Franco actually on the show at some point. There's still a few, quite a few of Franco's things that are still
that are just on VHS.
Yeah,
for sure. But anyway, yeah. So
Shining's next, because amazingly, I think there's actually like a Blu-ray of that now, which is
okay.
A mind-blowing concept.
Yeah, it's funny. There's not much left.
That's why we're here, Nick, to mop up the dregs.
Yes. Well, and I think we definitely got down near the bottom of the barrel today.
So we'll be back in about another month or so, and with more dregs for you. And it'll be my choice next time. So I'm gonna see if I can try and find something that isn't monumentally boring, just for a change.
Yeah, just switch things up.
Yeah, and then we can get back to the coma-inducing stuff.
The death march.
Right.
Trudge.
Anyway, for now, this has been me, Clive Davis, and him,
Nick. No last name given. Or Nicholas O'Sheacon. Let's give it the Gaelic name that I used on the other thing.
You have been watching Nicholas O'Sheacon and Clive Davis. It's the Dad's Army.
Right. In this episode of Film Craic. And
see you next time, I guess. Tra.